Hi guys, this episode contains discussions of child abuse, sexual assault, violence, murder and suicide. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you or someone you know needs support, please reach out to a crisis hotline or mental health professional. Welcome back, my culty crime crew. It's your girl Bubbles, and I'm so glad you're cozying up with me by the virtual fireplace again. Grab your warmest blanket, your favourite mug, and maybe something a little extra to fortify you tonight. Because this descent into darkness is a bone-chilling one. And I know what you're thinking. Bubbles, why are we diving into such a dark story again? Well, my crew, it's because even the most unsettling of cases can teach us something about human nature, about the darkness that lurks beneath the surface, and about the resilience of human spirit. Tonight, we're stepping into a house that has earned the chilling nickname, the House of Horrors. Behind its ordinary facade on Cromwell Street in Gloucester, England, unimaginable horrors took place. This is the story of Fred and Rose West, a seemingly ordinary couple who harboured unimaginable darkness within their home. Their crimes shocked the world and left a community reeling. But tonight, we're not just here to recount the gruesome details. We're going to explore the complexities of their life, the factors that led them down this twisted path, and the devastating impact their actions had on their victims and those who loved them most. Before we delve into the horrors that unfolded at 25 Cromwell Street, let's turn back the clock to the early lives of Fred and Rose West. Like many infamous figures in history, their stories begin with seemingly ordinary childhoods that do hint at the darkness that's to come. Born in 1941 in a small village in Hertfordshire, Fred West's childhood was marred by disturbing allegations and unsettling family dynamics. Whispers of incest and sexual abuse swirled around his family, casting a long, dark shadow over his formative years. Some even say that Fred himself fell victim to his father's twisted desires. As he grew older, Fred's behaviour grew increasingly erratic and violent, revealing a deep-seated rage and a troubling fascination with death. He was known for his cruelty towards animals, a disturbing habit of peering into windows, and a penchant for violent pornography. All voyeuristic tendencies that would later manifest in much more sinister ways. Rose Letts, born in 1953 in Devon, also endured a deeply troubled upbringing, one that began even before she took her first breath. During her pregnancy with Rose, her mother Daisy was subjected to electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, as a quote, treatment for her severe depression. This controversial practice, which involved passing electrical currents through the brain, was thought to alleviate depression, but its effects on a developing fetus were unknown and potentially harmful. A chaotic family life, marked by her father's mental illness and the strain it placed on her mother, left Rose aching for affection and attention. She started to seek solace in the arms of older men, engaging in self-destructive impulses and seeking validation in all the wrong places. Rose's teenage years were a desperate search for love and stability, a search that ultimately would lead her into the arms of Fred West in 1969. Fred, with his domineering personality and dark desires, found a willing accomplice in Rose, who longed for the twisted sense of belonging and acceptance that he offered. Yet it wasn't just a need for affection that drew Rose to Fred. There are theories that Rose harboured her own latent darkness, a fascination with violence and control that Fred recognised and nurtured. Together, they embarked on a life filled with violence, manipulation, and a shared appetite for the macabre. Their relationship was a toxic cocktail of control, abuse, and shared secrets, a breeding ground for the horrors that are to come. Little did the world know this seemingly unremarkable couple harboured a darkness within them that would soon unleash unimaginable horrors upon their victims. The seeds of evil had been sown in their early lives, and as they settled into their home at 25 Cromwell Street in 1972, those seeds would take root and flourish in the most horrific ways. Now picture this, a seemingly ordinary house at 25 Cromwell Street, Gloucester. A modest 2-storey home with lace curtains and a well-tended garden. Could be any home, on any street, in any town. But behind its unassuming facade, this house harboured a darkness that would shock the world. Stepping inside, one might initially be struck by a sense of warmth and domesticity. The smell of a home-cooked meal might linger on the air, and the soft glow of lamps might cast inviting shadows on the walls. But beneath this veneer of normalcy lay a labyrinth of secrets, a house meticulously modified to facilitate unimaginable horrors. Beneath the house, Fred had excavated a network of cellars, creating a subterranean world that was hidden from prying eyes. These cellars, accessed through a trapdoor concealed beneath the floorboards, would become the West's twisted playground, a place where their darkest fantasies could play out in secret. Upstairs, the house held even more secrets. Walls were strategically altered to create hidden cavities and false walls. These spaces, some barely large enough for a person to squeeze into, served as gruesome hiding places for the West's victims. One particularly chilling modification was the disappearing bathroom. Fred removed the bathroom window, bricked it up, and covered it with tiles, effectively erasing it from sight. This seemingly innocuous change hid a dark truth. The space behind the bath became a makeshift tomb for where one of their victims was discovered. The house also had another peculiar feature, a coal chute that led directly into the cellar. This seemingly mundane detail would later prove to be a crucial piece of evidence, revealing the West's method of disposing of their victims. Every corner of 25 Cromwell Street seemed to hold a secret, a silent witness to the horrors that transpired within its walls. It was a house that whispered unspeakable acts. It was a house that whispered of unspeakable acts. A house that had become an extension of the West's twisted minds. The house at 25 Cromwell Street was not merely a crime scene. It was a living, breathing testament to the depths of human depravity. It was a place where innocence was shattered, where lives were extinguished, and where evil reigned supreme. But, as we will soon discover, the darkness that surrounded this house would eventually be exposed, and the truth, no matter how horrifying, would finally come to light. Now let's talk about the victims. The lives tragically intertwined with the evil that festered within 25 Cromwell Street. While each life lost was a devastating blow to their loved ones, the stories of 3 women in particular, Rena West, Charmaine West, and Heather West, paint a chilling picture of the darkness that consumed this seemingly ordinary home. Born Rita Costello, a young woman with a gentle spirit, met Fred in the early 1960s. They married quickly, and Rena soon found herself pregnant with Charmaine. Unbeknownst to her, though, She had entered into a union with a man whose heart was filled to the brim with darkness. Fred's true nature emerged after Charmaine's birth, and Rena became trapped in a cycle of abuse and fear. In August of 1967, Rena disappeared. Fred claimed that she'd abandoned her family, but the truth was far more sinister. Rena had become the first victim of Fred's brutality. Her life taken within the very walls that would later become infamous for the horrors they concealed. Left to care for Charmaine, Fred's violence found a new target. The young girl, barely 8 years old, suffered abuse and neglect at the hands of her father and new stepmother. In 1971, while Fred was briefly imprisoned, Charmaine vanished. It's believed that Rose, under Fred's influence, and personally, I think, perhaps driven by her own twisted desires, took the young girl's life. The disappearances of Rena and Charmaine marked the beginning of a reign of terror that would last over a decade. Over the years, many other young women would fall victim to the West's depravity, their lives cut drastically short within the walls of 25 Cromwell Street. Years later, darkness would strike the West family again. Heather, Fred and Rose's 16-year-old daughter, full of life and dreams, just disappeared in 1987. Initially, her parents claimed she had run away, but as we will soon uncover, the truth was far more horrifying. Rena Costello, Charmaine West, Linda Goff, Carol Ann Cooper, Lucy Partington, Teresa Siegenthaler, Shirley Robinson, Juanita Mott, Alison Chambers, Shirley Hubbard, and Heather West. These are just some of the names forever etched into the dark history of 25 Cromwell Street. Their lives cut short by unspeakable acts of violence serve as a chilling reminder of the depths of human depravity and the enduring power of hope in the face of tragedy. The darkness that shrouded 25 Cromwell Street was so deep, so insidious, that it took years for the truth to emerge. But, as the saying goes, the truth will out. And in this case, it did so, in the most chilling way. In the early 1990s, a growing unease settled over Cromwell Street. Neighbours whispered about the strange comings and goings at number 25, the unsettling sounds that sometimes echoed from within, and the unsettling feeling that something was just deeply wrong. One neighbour, Mary, recounted, quote, "There was an awful smell coming from the house, and the children just always seemed scared. It just didn't feel right." End quote. But it wasn't until the disappearance of 16-year-old Heather West, Fred and Rose's daughter, that finally shattered the facade of normalcy. Heather's social worker, the amazing woman known as Janet Leach, had been growing increasingly alarmed. She'd noticed Heather's frequent absences from school, the unexplained bruises, and the withdrawn demeanour that hinted at unspeakable horrors. Leach's persistence in reporting her concerns, despite initial pushback from authorities, would prove pivotal. Armed with a search warrant, the police descended upon 25 Cromwell Street in February 1994. I was literally a month old. Detective Superintendent John Bennett, who led the investigation, later described the scene, quote, "It was like stepping into a nightmare. The house was a labyrinth of horrors, with hidden rooms and secret passages. The smell of death was overwhelming." End quote. The nation watched in horror as the gruesome discoveries unfolded, each day's headlines revealing more chilling details. The house, once a symbol of domesticity, was now a macabre excavation site, yielding the skeletal remains of 9 young women, including Heather. Each victim had been subjected to unimaginable torture and abuse before their lives were brutally extinguished. The house itself, with its hidden rooms, secret passages, and makeshift graves, became a chilling testament to the West's depravity. As the full extent of the horrors at 25 Cromwell Street came to light, the nation was gripped by a mix of shock, disgust, and morbid fascination. The media frenzy surrounding the case was unprecedented, with every new revelation fueling public outrage and demands for justice. But before the Wests could face the full consequences of their actions, they would first have to stand trial for their crimes, a trial that would captivate the world and expose the darkest depths of human evil. The trial of Fred and Rose West was a media spectacle, a national reckoning with the horrors that had unfolded in their seemingly ordinary home. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The skeletal remains of their victims, the chilling testimony of surviving victims, and the macabre artefacts unearthed from the depths of 25 Cromwell Street. The courtroom became a battleground of accusations and denials. Fred, facing a life sentence, initially admitted to the murders, then later recanted, of course, blaming Rose for everything. In a desperate attempt to evade responsibility, he claimed, quote, "It was her. She did it. I'm innocent," end quote. Rose, in turn, maintained her innocence throughout, portraying herself as a victim of Fred's manipulation and abuse. She insisted, quote, "I loved my children. I would never hurt them. Fred made me do terrible things," end quote. If you can't tell, I really don't like this woman. The trial gripped the nation, with daily headlines detailing the gruesome evidence and the West's shocking claims. The public was horrified and fascinated, struggling to comprehend how such atrocities could occur in their midst. One newspaper headline screamed, "House of Horrors, the full story of evil." The media frenzy surrounding the case was just relentless, with reporters camped outside the courthouse, broadcasting live updates and analysing every single twist and turn of the trial. The intense scrutiny raised questions about the ethics of reporting on such sensitive and really disturbing events, but it also ensured that the victims' stories and names were never forgotten, which I think is the most important thing. In the end, the jury's verdict was swift and unanimous. Fred, found guilty on all 12 counts of murder, was sentenced to life imprisonment. But before he could face the full weight of justice, he took his own life in prison. A final act of a coward that left many questions unanswered. Detective Superintendent John Bennett, who led the investigation, remarked, quote, "Fred West cheated justice. He took the easy way out, leaving us with more questions than answers," end quote. The man was a coward. Rose, also convicted on 10 counts of murder, was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The judge, Mr. Justice Mantell, declared, quote, "If attention is to be paid to what I think, you will never be released," end quote. Her sentence, while really severe, was met with mixed reactions, with some feeling it wasn't harsh enough for the magnitude of her crimes, and it wasn't. Her sentence, while severe, was met with mixed reactions, with some feeling it wasn't harsh enough for the magnitude of her crimes. The mother of one of the victims, her voice trembling with grief and anger, cried out in the courtroom, quote, "Life in prison is not enough. She should rot in hell for what she did to my daughter," end quote. The aftermath of the West case was profound and far, far-reaching. It shattered the illusion of safety in suburban communities, exposed the dark underbelly of domestic violence, and raised serious questions about the effectiveness of child protection services. The case prompted a nationwide review of child protection procedures in the UK and led to significant reforms aimed at preventing future tragedies such as this. But the scars ran deep, and the questions lingered. How could such horrors happen in a seemingly civilised society? What drove Fred and Rose to commit such unspeakable acts? To truly understand the depths of the West's depravity, we must delve into the twisted labyrinth of their minds. What drove them to commit such unspeakable acts? What dark forces shaped their personalities and fueled their insatiable appetite for cruelty? Now, Fred West was a textbook psychopath. He was a master manipulator, a predator who preyed on the vulnerable. He was devoid of empathy, incapable of remorse, and driven by a sadistic thirst for power and control. Dr. Glyn Davies, a forensic psychiatrist who interviewed Fred extensively, described him as, quote, a man without conscience, a black hole of evil, end quote. Rose West, however, remains a more enigmatic figure. Was she a willing accomplice, driven by her own dark desires? Or was she a victim of Fred's coercive control, trapped in a cycle of abuse and manipulation? Some experts, like forensic psychologist Dr. Jane Carter Wood, argue that Rose was equally culpable in the crimes, pointing to the evidence of her active participation and enjoyment in the torture and abuse of the victims. Others, like criminologist Professor David Wilson, believe that Rose was profoundly damaged by her own traumatic childhood and was ultimately under Fred's control. He states, quote, Rose was a product of her environment, shaped by the abuse she suffered and the toxic relationship that she had with Fred, end quote. Their relationship was far from a conventional courtship. It was a twisted dance with the devil, a toxic tango fueled by their shared darkness and insatiable appetite for cruelty. Their bond was forged in the fires of manipulation, control, and a mutual fascination with the macabre. Fred, the puppet master, pulled his strings, exploiting Rose's vulnerabilities and insecurities. He offered her a twisted sense of belonging, a refuge from her troubled past, and a warped validation of her darkest desires. Rose, the willing marionette, danced to his tune, her participation driven by a complex mix of fear, loyalty, and a perverse sense of empowerment. Their shared descent into depravity was a gradual one, a slow erosion of boundaries, and a normalisation of the abhorrent. What began as a twisted game of control and submission soon escalated into a reign of terror as they preyed upon the vulnerable and indulged their sadistic fantasies. The truth about Rose's role may never be fully known. However, it is clear that she was a complex and deeply disturbed individual who played a significant part in the horrors that unfolded at 25 Cromwell Street. Whether she was a willing participant or a coerced accomplice, her actions were undeniably monstrous, and she remains one of the most infamous female serial killers in history. The case of Fred and Rose West is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within seemingly ordinary individuals. It is a story of betrayal, cruelty, and unimaginable evil. But it is also the story of resilience, hope, and the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome even the darkest of tragedies. The Cromwell Street murders were not just a story of individual evil. They were a reflection of societal failures. The warning signs were there. The cries for help went unheeded. And the system designed to protect the vulnerable failed oh so miserably. The case exposed deep-seated flaws in child protection services, social services, and the police in the UK. It highlighted a culture of disbelief and a tendency to dismiss the concerns of vulnerable individuals, particularly those from marginalised backgrounds. Many of the victims were young runaways or women struggling with addiction and mental health issues, who were often overlooked and dismissed by society. One social worker who wished to remain anonymous confessed, quote, "We were underworked and underfunded. There were so many cases and we just did not have the resources to properly investigate every concern." End quote. The case sparked a national outcry, leading to a public inquiry into the handling of the investigation and a review of child protection procedures. It also fueled a wider conversation about the prevalence of domestic violence and the need for greater support for the victims. The public's anger and frustration were palpable, with many demanding answers and accountability. The Home Secretary at the time, Michael Howard, acknowledged the failings, stating, quote, "We must learn from the mistakes that were made and ensure that such a tragedy never happens again." End quote. In the wake of 25 Cromwell Street, there were significant changes made to child protection laws and practices in the UK. The case served as a catalyst for reform, prompting a greater emphasis on early intervention, multi-agency collaboration, and a more proactive approach to safeguarding children, which is the most important thing. The Children Act of 1989 was amended to strengthen the rights of children and ensure their voices were heard. Additionally, new guidelines were introduced for assessing and managing risk in child protection cases, with a greater emphasis on information sharing between agencies. But the impact of the case extended far beyond just legal reforms. The community of Gloucester, where the crimes took place, was deeply scarred by these events. The House of Horrors became a symbol of unspeakable evil, casting a long shadow over the town. The media frenzy surrounding the case also raised questions about journalistic ethics and the potential for sensationalism in reporting on such sensitive topics. The Cromwell Street murders were a national tragedy, a stain on the conscience of a nation. But amidst the darkness, there is also hope. The resilience of the victims' families, the tireless efforts of investigators and social workers, and the determination to learn from this tragedy offer a glimmer of light in the face of unimaginable horror. As we move forward, we must honour the memory of the victims by continuing to advocate for the vulnerable, demand accountability from those in power, and work towards a society where everyone is safe and protected. The Cromwell Street murders serve as a chilling reminder that we must remain vigilant against the darkness that can lurk within our communities and strive to create a world where such horrors are never to be repeated again. The horrors uncovered at 25 Cromwell Street left deep scars on the community of Gloucester. The sense of shock, betrayal, and grief was overwhelming. However, amidst the darkness, the spirit of resilience began to emerge. In the wake of the tragedy, the community came together, offering support to one another and seeking solace in shared grief. Candlelight vigils were held, memorials were created, and counselling services were established to help people cope with the trauma. Local churches and community centres opened their doors, providing a safe space for residents to gather, share their experiences, and find comfort in one another. The residents of Gloucester refused to be defined by the horrific acts that had taken place in their midst. They organised fundraising events to support the families of the victims, volunteered their time to help those in need, and worked tirelessly to create a safer and more supportive environment for their children. The Gloucestershire Counselling Service saw a surge in demand as people sought help to process their grief and trauma. Community led initiatives such as the Gloucester Safer City project were launched to address the root causes of violence and promote a culture of safety and respect. The community's resilience was not just about overcoming the immediate trauma. It was about building a stronger, more compassionate society. The tragedy served as a catalyst for change, prompting local organisations, schools and community groups to collaborate on initiatives aimed at preventing future violence and abuse. One local resident, Sarah, reflected on the impact of the tragedy, quote, "It brought us all closer together. We realised that we had to look out for each other now, support each other, and never turn a blind eye to the suffering of others." End quote. The Cromwell Street murders may have cast a dark shadow over Gloucester, but they also ignited a spark of hope and resilience. The community's determination to heal, to learn from the tragedy, and to build a better future is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. As one resident, Sarah, put it, quote, "We are a community that has been through hell, but we are also a community that has found strength in each other. We will never forget what happened, but we will not let it define us." End quote. The legacy of the Cromwell Street murders is not just one of pain and loss. It is also a story of resilience, community spirit, and the enduring power of hope. The people of Gloucester have shown that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, there is always the possibility of finding light and building a better future together. The horrors that unfolded at 25 Cromwell Street continue to haunt us, a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. This case is a chilling testament to the depths of human depravity. It's a story of betrayal, cruelty, unimaginable evil. But it is also a story of resilience, hope, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The victims' families, the community of Gloucester, and the countless individuals who were touched by this tragedy have shown us that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, there is always the possibility of finding light. Throughout this whole case, I can't help but be haunted by the fact that not only did they commit these horrific acts against so many other women, but they also committed it against their own daughter. It's a chilling reminder of the depths of depravity that some people are capable of. It's a bit shocking, really. The Cromwell Street murders forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about our society, our institutions, and ourselves. It exposed the cracks in our systems, the vulnerabilities of our communities, and the fragility of human life. But it also sparked a movement for change, a collective determination to protect the vulnerable, hold perpetrators accountable, and build a safer, more compassionate world. And as we reflect on the legacy of this tragedy, let us remember the victims, honour their memory, and vow to never forget the lessons learned. Let us strive to create a society where every child is safe, every voice is heard, and every life is valued. Let us choose hope over despair, love over hate, and as always, light over darkness. For in the end, it's our collective responsibility to ensure that the horrors that happened at Cromwell Street are never to be repeated again. And in the words of Maya Angelou, "And still I rise." Let us all rise above the darkness together. And with that, my culty crime crew, it's time to part ways. But before we do that, I want to extend a heartfelt invitation to you guys. Now, if there is any crime or cult story that you are curious about, that you feel needs to be told, please, I invite you to email me at cozy.cults.crimes@gmail.com. That's cozy.cults.crimes@gmail.com. Or message me at Instagram at the same handle at cozy.cults.crimes. Your interests and insights help me shape these episodes, and together I hope we can continue to uncover the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows. And also, I do want to say, if today's episode has touched you or stirred something within, please take a moment for yourselves. Practice self-care, reach out to a friend, or simply enjoy a warm cup of tea wrapped in your dressing gown. I'm literally wrapped in mine now. Honestly, if you or someone you know needs support, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to Lifeline Australia. You can call them at 13 11 14, or you can even text them at 0477 13 1114. They offer confidential crisis support and are available 24/7. Please remember, there is always help available, and you're never alone. You've always got us, your culty crime crew, behind you all the way. Until next time, keep that flame of curiosity burning, but never forget the warmth of the fires that keep us connected together. Be well, stay cozy, and remember, in pursuing truth, we always hope to find the light. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Bubbles, and I can't wait to have you back again next time for another journey into the shadowy yet strangely comforting world of cozy cults and crimes. I'll see you next time. Bye!